All right. Good morning. Good morning. Well, I've been keeping up with this case out of Chicago, and it is an interesting case. It involves a mother and her 14-year-old son. The 14-year-old son allegedly shot another man to death at the behest or the order of his mother. And there's a twist to the story. In fact, there are several twists to the story. I'm going to offer you a legal analysis of this intriguing story coming out of the Windy City. Stay with me. I want to talk about it for a few minutes. There are a lot of things here to learn. I'm going to share some legal insight with you. All right? Hang around. All right, so yes, what an intriguing case it is out of Chicago. A mother and her 14-year-old son are involved in a shooting, and I want to talk about it. There are some legal aspects to this case that I think we all should know. There are a few things here to learn, all right? So that's what I'm going to get into for a few minutes this morning. And as you know, I am Augustus Corbett, Attorney Augustus Corbett, also known as the Minister of Justice, and I'm one half of the Defiant Lawyers. Each and every week, typically on Saturdays, we bring you a legal analysis of trending politics, policies, personalities, and pop culture to empower you with the information you need to defy an unjust legal system. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe, like, share, comment, all that good stuff so that we can continue growing this very important channel. All right, so yes, this is an intriguing story. When I watched this story and began to put my head around it, I knew I had to cover this story. I had to cover this story. Although I'm supposed to be on vacation this week and next week, still, I had to sink my teeth in this story. What a story. I'm sure you've watched it, you've seen it. If not, you will, because it will be hitting the news. Um, the first thing I want to observe about this story is the sad passing of a young man. A young man was killed in this story. So our condolences go out to this young man's family. And anytime there's a loss of life, we grieve with the family, and it's sad that it happened. And then next to that is the trauma that is in our community, that someone can die, can lose their life in such a oftentimes senseless, trivial way. Okay, life is so cheap oftentimes in inner city communities. Okay, and as I looked at this story, I'm just telling you, there's no reason why anyone should have been killed in this situation. The whole situation should have played out very, very different, but it did not. And that's some of the sort of long term, um, sort of trauma that we deal with, and that should be addressed, because over almost anything, and it's been like that for a long time, but almost anything, um, a person can lose their life in the African American community. I mean, stuff as simple as stepping on someone's toes, or calling someone the wrong name, being in the wrong neighborhood, wearing the wrong colors, just any number of things. And all that speaks of the trauma that our community, the African American community, has suffered. So those are the first things that I want to acknowledge right off the bat. Again, my sincere condolences to the family, and we really got to address the trauma in our neighborhood that oftentimes lead to premature death and jail and prison and so forth. All right. Now, with that said, let's look at some of the legal aspects of this case. I'm going to play you about three videos that sort of spells out what happened, and then I'm going to give you a legal analysis. I'm not going to be long, but what a story! What a story! So let's begin with the very first video here.
Get your food! Who? Get in the car? Who? Nay. Get your food! Get your food! If you say one more thing, I'm gonna knock you out. Oh my grandma, say one more thing, I'm gonna knock you out. Oh, say one more thing, I'm gonna knock you out.
You saw what you saw. You saw that young man punch this woman and several times. And he is the young man who was shot because her son, the young man in the hoodie who walked in, to the up to the door, and the police alleged that she texted him and told him to come into the store because of the confrontation. And when the young man got there, he saw the other young dude assault his mother. So he pulled out a pistol and allegedly shot the guy to death. All right. Um, so the question is, was that self-defense or defense of others, or was that murder? So the police initially said it was murder. So they charged her and him, her son, with murder. But then that last video tape came out, and then the police reversed course and dropped the murder charge. So what we're wanting to know is whether or not this is indeed a murder, or was this a defense of others? Because any one of us could be in a situation like that, and when you pull the trigger, if you got a gun and you defend yourself or defend someone else, I mean, you really kind of need to know whether or not what you're doing is justified, because it really, really, really can um, have some serious legal consequences in both the criminal court and in the civil court. And there's also a lot of talk going about the family of the young man who was killed retaliating against the mother and her son. And this is Chicago, right? They don't mind getting busy there. They don't mind getting violent in Chicago. There's some really good people in Chicago, but Chicago does have a reputation of, you know, getting violent. And so there's retaliatory talk from the victim's family toward the young man and his mother. So again, if you're in that situation where you're armed and you need to defend yourself or defend someone else, I mean, so what should be running through your mind? Because again, the consequences can be severe if you make the wrong decision. I mean, you could be facing a murder charge. And even if you don't face a murder charge, you could be facing a very, very serious lawsuit. So it's a life-changing event. So I thought it very necessary to share some things with you about this case legally. All right, so was this defense of others or was this first degree murder? The police initially thought it was first degree murder. I understand the state attorney, Kim Cook, said, no, we believe that he was justified in defending his mother. All right, so I'm not an Illinois licensed attorney. I'm licensed here in Texas, but I did look up the Illinois statute that Kim Cook and her prosecutors looked at, and let's look at that statute. It's really important with this case. Let me pull it up. All right. All right, so here is the statute, defense of others. And here's what it says. It says a person is justified in the use of force against another when and to the extent that he reasonably believes, and you notice that's underlined and I got that colored yellow, when he reasonably believes that such conduct is necessary to defend himself or another. So we see off the bat that under Illinois law, a person can defend himself or someone else. So the young man had the right not only to defend himself, but to defend his mother. But that's not the end of the evaluation. Notice his belief that he needed to use deadly force had to be reasonable. It had to be a reasonable belief. Right? Because the force has to be justified. It has to be, as the statute says, to the extent that he reasonably believes. All right? And the young man didn't jump in and start fighting. He pulled out a gun and started shooting. So he used deadly force, not just force. He didn't jump in and start fighting the guy back. He started firing his pistol. So was that measure or that degree of force justified? Again, State Attorney Kim Cook believes so. And I'm trying to explain why she believes so. All right, so it goes on to say, such conduct is necessary to defend himself or another against such others' imminent use of unlawful force. All right, imminent means it is right here. It's happening right now. It is not wait here till I get back. Stay here. I'm going home to get my gun. No, it is imminent. It is happening in a split second. All right, so the force that was used against his mother was occurring right in his eyesight in real time. That would qualify as imminent. And that force appeared to be unlawful, right? Because they were just having a verbal disagreement. That is not provocation enough to start throwing blows, especially a man toward a woman. Please disregard. My phone is ringing here. I think that's Chloe trying to contact me. So yes, imminent use of unlawful force. The force appeared to be unlawful. She didn't throw any blows at him. I don't know if she threatened him or anything. It doesn't sound like it. You could hear some of what was going on, and it didn't seem like there was any reason for him to start throwing blows, but he started throwing blows. So I think the element of imminent use of unlawful force is met here under these facts. But then it goes on to say, however, he's justified in the use of force which is intended or likely to cause death or great bodily harm only if. So the statute tightens up and says that deadly force is justified only if he reasonably believes that such force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily injury to himself or another. All right, so let's break that down. So the young man, Kim Cook believed, was justified in the use of deadly force because she apparently believes that it was reasonable for him to believe that such force was necessary to prevent imminent death. Now let's stop there. We don't know if him throwing haymakers at this mom, hitting her. It looks like he hit her a couple of times. We don't know if that would have caused death, just the blows. And I don't know that he was armed with anything. So maybe it would be a stretch to say the blows that he was throwing would cause death. But it goes on to say, or great bodily harm. So those blows, being that he was a man and this was a woman, then I can certainly see why Kim Cook would say, hey, him throwing those haymakers like that at this mother could certainly have caused great bodily harm. So the young man reasonably believed that firing his pistol was necessary to save his mother from, again, death unlikely, but serious bodily harm or great bodily harm. I mean, if he's hitting her in the face, in the head or something, I mean, yes, that could have caused great bodily harm. And from what we saw in the video, there were several blows thrown. I mean, he was continuing to throw them. And notice, no one jumped in to try to stop it. There was one older gentleman there who ran. I mean, he ran out the building. So this guy was, and again, God bless his memory, and we grieve with this parent, with his family, um, and we, send our condolences for the third time for the loss of his life. It's so unfortunate that he died in a situation like this. Um, but those blows that he was throwing that we saw in the video, the 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 prosecutor felt the chief prosecutor felt like those blows could have caused great bodily harm to the young man's mother, therefore, or the commission of a forcible felony. Therefore, state prosecutor Kim Cook said this was defense of others. This was not murder. So she reversed what the police did by charging the mom and the son with murder. Now, why was the mom charged? Again, because the police reported that she ordered her son to start shooting this guy. All right. That's the allegation the police made. Whether it's true or not, let's assume that it is true. Still, the state attorney's office believe that they were justified in trying to stop this guy from doing using the unlawful force that he was using against his mother. So we have a similar law here in Texas, right? And yeah, if you jump on someone, or if someone is using some unlawful force against someone that you know, love, even if you don't know them, I mean, you can um and oftentimes make a pretty strong argument that the force you're using to stop this unlawful force was justified. I mean, you can make a pretty strong argument. Again, I think you need to be, fairly sure about it, because the consequences can be grave. They can be very serious. You can end up like with this mother and her son facing a murder charge, and that's a serious thing. And then even if the murder charge is dropped, as it was in this case, and it appears to be rightfully so, you still could face a very serious lawsuit where you're having to um, spend the money to hire an attorney and all of that. I mean, it still can wreck your life, can really have serious consequences for your life. So this we have a similar statute here in Texas, and it's this sort of analysis that the prosecutor and the defense team has to do to see if the shooting was indeed justified. Now, when you're going through this, things are happening. God forbid that you go through this, but if you ever go through this, God forbid that I ever go through it. I never ever. I'm typically armed every time you see me. I'll tell you that. I'm typically armed, but man, I would do anything to avoid having to ever use my firearm. I just would not want, I just would not, honestly. I value life too much. I really do. value my life, I value the life of others too much to ever want to be in that situation. And so you don't really have time to think about and do all this analysis. You're kind of acting sort of, by instinct. And hopefully your instincts are lawful. Hopefully your instincts are rational. Hopefully your instincts are, not going to cause you to end up in a lot of legal issues. Now, the thing is, when a case like this goes to trial, I've tried uh, many of these cases, and when they go to trial, the jury has to look at it from the viewpoint of the person who used the force. So that helps. I mean, that helps a self-defense case or defense of others case, because the jury has to sort of get in the head of the person doing the shooting. And so if this young man was put on the stand, he would have to take the stand, and testify what he was feeling, what he was thinking, what was going on in his mind, what was happening inside him. And if all of that sounded reasonable, then there was a chance he would have gotten acquitted anyway at trial, right? Just based on the statute. All right, so the charges were dropped. Then another plot twist. Then the mother filed a lawsuit against the city for arresting her in the first place. What a plot twist. She says, I should have never been arrested. I should have never gone through that. So I'm suing the city. I'm suing the cops who arrested me, because they should have done, a better job, investigating the case and seeing that my son and I were justified in what we did. And instead of that, they arrested me, spent time in jail. My life has been turned upside down. They were not there for me. So she filed a malicious prosecution lawsuit against the city. Let's talk about that briefly. Malicious prosecution. All right, because Illinois courts, like most courts in most states, have long disfavored actions for malicious prosecution. In other words, courts don't like these types of lawsuits, and so they have basically enacted or have handed down a very tough set of elements to win this type of case. So a plaintiff in Illinois in a malicious prosecution lawsuit must, number one, show the wrongfully filed action was terminated in his favor. So that happened here because Kim Cook dropped this lawsuit. Dropped the charge, the murder charge. So she meets element number one. She can show the wrongfully filed action was terminated in their favor. So she meets element number one. Element number two, that the charges were brought maliciously without probable cause. So she's saying that the 6 police officers who brought these charges did so maliciously because they didn't even have probable cause. Had they took the time to do an investigation, had they done the investigation and saw the second tape, apparently they didn't see the first. Apparently they didn't see the tape of the man punching the mother. And so the mother is saying, had they not maliciously jumped up and did a rush to judgment here and found the other video, they would have seen that I was being attacked. Therefore, my son and I both had justification to get this man off me. So I think she could probably meet the second element, that the charges were brought maliciously without probable cause. And the third element is that she must show and plead and prove some special injury or special damage beyond the usual expense, time, or annoyance in defending a lawsuit. And typically under Illinois law, that just simply means that she was arrested, that some property was seized, or something else happened to her. So in this case, she was arrested, she went to jail, etc. So that is special injury, that is special damage beyond just the expense and inconvenience of filing a lawsuit. So it looks like she could have a decent case here. All right. I don't know. I don't know the facts. I only know what has been reported. I only know what we see in the video. But it looks like she at least has a triable case. And quite often, cases like this, especially when the state attorney dropped the charges before they even hit the court system, the city of Chicago very well may just pull out some money and just try to sue and try to settle this case, right? So we'll see what happens. Again, I'm not an Illinois lawyer. I don't know the nuances of that legal system there and the nuances of their laws. I'm a Texas attorney, but just having practiced for so long, I can speculate, um, you know, pretty accurately. And I think she may have a decent case here. And I agree with the fact that this was a defense of others case. Um, Based on Illinois statute, it seems like the young man, her son, the 14-year-old kid, seems like he was justified in using deadly force in defense of his mother. So I wanted to share all of that with you all because, once again, any number of us could be in a situation like this, and we would be better served to know typically how these cases go. That we need to be very, very thoughtful before we pull out our pistol and start shooting people. And like I said, this case just really the root of this case is just the trauma in the African American community that people can die over hardly anything. I don't know what kicked off with this. I don't know if they knew each other beforehand. I don't think so. From everything that I have heard about this woman, she's an upstanding citizen. In fact, let me play just a couple of minutes of her press conference that she and her attorneys did when they announced their lawsuit. Just a couple of minutes. Hold on.
I'm just spelling my name, Ari, attorney Ari Williams, A-R-I Williams, common spelling. Thank you all for being here today. I want to first thank the Cook County State's Attorney, Kim Fox, for doing the right thing and dismissing the charges. This is what justice looks like. I also want to acknowledge everyone who has been impacted by this in any way. To everyone who has supported Ms. Hood and her family through this trying time, we thank you. Yesterday, criminal charges of first-degree murder were dismissed against Ms. Hood and her 14-year-old son, rightfully so. Now that she is free, we think it is important that her story is told and that she is heard.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carlisha, Carlishia. Last name is Hood, Hood. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the support for me and my family. On June 18th of this year, my life changed. My son's life changed. I've experienced pain in many ways that I would never have thought, never. What happened to me was totally unnecessary. Never in a million years would I have imagined being brutally attacked, beaten, and then arrested. I am thankful that the Cook County State's Attorney dismissed the case. I am also thankful to have my son with me and by my side, and also his charges being dismissed. I thank my family for supporting me and the people all over the world. The people did not play. And I just thank God everything was revealed. And just everybody who has been praying and rooting for us, I just thank God for them. That did not go unnoticed. You are all not forgotten. And we are praying for all the families affected by this horrible tragedy. I am now in the process of healing and putting my family's life back together. During this trying time, we ask if, we can please have space to rest and recover from this life-altering situation. And that you all continue to keep us in your prayers. In the near future, I will be able to respond to outpouring of support. Again, I just need a little time.
All right. So that is the mother announcing that she is filing a lawsuit against the city of Chicago because of the actions of, I believe, 6 police officers. She's filing a malicious prosecution lawsuit. Again, based on the elements of malicious prosecution and the facts as I know them, seems like she has at least a triable case. That means that if she needed to, she could have a good chance to win at trial, just based on the elements and facts as I understand them. But yes, it's still a sad case. A young man lost his life over what appears to be much of nothing. 2 other folks' lives are forever changed. Family members are grieving and angry, and we pray that there's no retaliation on this family. And I guess I want to highlight again, just in the Black community, oftentimes life is so cheap and the trauma so deep that anything can trigger violence. And then we do live in a violent nation where people tend to want to pick up a gun. Everybody's armed, mass shootings everywhere, gang banging everywhere. I mean, people shooting folks through the door, people shooting folks for pulling in their driveways. I mean, it's just a violent, violent country, unfortunately. And so not only in the African American community, in the American community, guns are everywhere. People are frustrated and angry and mean and hostile toward one another. And so life, unfortunately, is very cheap. If anything, that sort of transcends this entire story, it is that sad fact. Now, before I get out of here, there are a couple of comments. Sean Breezy, hello, my man. Thank you for tuning in. One of our committed subscribers here, Sean Breezy, says she could have left the situation. She could have left the situation. So, yeah, I suppose, you could say that, Sean. Although when we look at the video, we see this guy really pounding her with those punches. I saw 1 or 2 or 3 maybe, and no one was coming to her defense. So I'm not sure that she could have left anyway, because he kind of had her in a corner. So I'm not sure that she could have left. And besides, her son is watching this as it occurred. I mean, literally looking at it as it occurred. So, what was he going to do? He had to defend his mom from our vantage point, from what we see. So I understand what you're saying, and I agree with it. If you can avoid something like that, avoid it at all costs. If you can walk away, if you can get away, do so. Let pulling your gun or engaging in violence be the very, very, very last option. Very last option. People like me who represent folks in the criminal justice system and represent folks in civil court, when things like this happen, we see the aftermath of this violence. And it is oftentimes just overwhelming to see this, to see these autopsy pictures, to see these grieving families, to see how these families are forever changed. I've had violence occur in my family. I had brothers who were killed. So it's devastating. So I agree. If there's any way to avoid it, any way to get away, do so. Someone here says if that's justified, then so was George Zimmerman's shooting of Trayvon Martin. Um, I was almost tempted to just completely overlook that comment because I think it's stupid, to be honest with you. The facts in the George Zimmerman Trayvon Martin case are completely different than this case. Namely, Trayvon Martin was going to the store and returning home after buying a bag of Skittles. He did nothing to George Zimmerman whatsoever. He was minding his business, and George Zimmerman started following him and tracking him. Um, Even after the 911 dispatcher told him not to do so. George Zimmerman was not a police officer. He had no legal or lawful authority to be accosting this young man like that. Um, Also, Trayvon was a 17-year-old kid. George Zimmerman was a fully grown man, and he was acquitted, but hmm, the facts are totally different than what we saw in this situation. And again, I want to be sensitive to the family who lost the young man in this case. I am not saying that he deserved to die. I'm not saying that at all. Again, I've said multiple times, and I want to repeatedly say he should not have died. The whole thing should not have happened. This should not have happened. I mean, people shouldn't lose their lives because of situations like this. And when you find out what everything started over, oftentimes it is absolutely nothing. Unlike the George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin situation, where again, that young man was minding his business, doing nothing to no one, nothing. Okay. And he lost his life that day, sadly. Okay. So that is going to conclude my comments about this very sad case. If you have additional questions about this, leave your comments or questions in the comment section. I will read some of them. Oftentimes, I don't read them all because sometimes they're just so negative. I ain't got time for it. But I will oftentimes read the ones that make some sense and are in the right spirit, and I will respond, either me or Chloe. But anyway, thank you for tuning in, and you all have a good day, and do everything you can to avoid situations just like this. The 4th of July is coming up next week. Some of you are going to be off work. It's going to be a holiday. Enjoy it. If you don't hear from us anymore. But again, this is Augustus Corbett, a.k.a. the Minister of Justice. You've been listening to the Defiant Lawyers. You have a good one. Peace. And God bless you. Bye.